can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Now, Don, I hope the man I'm about to introduce has listened to some of our podcasts to just gauge on how disjointed and hopeless you are. It's like working with a dolphin at Marineland working with you.
I was just thinking...
so don't embarrass him any more than you already have.
I was just Would you shut up for a moment? How apt is that title for the show? You can't be serious.
Yep, that's right.
The way you were ranting and raving, I thought you cannot be serious prior to coming on air just now.
Because, Don, you were trying to... You thrust the wrong microphone under his mouth. I was handling it. I sat him down. You said, I want to ask you a question, but I'm not going to do it now. And I said, Don, that is completely redundant, what you just said then. Wait till I introduce him. I'm out of my depth a bit here, not often out of my depth a lot when I interview people because I know very little about this industry, but you are the man that knows about this industry, and I thought we would get this gentleman in today because the Melbourne Cup, Don, believe it or not, is about 4 weeks away, I think, or 5, is it? When is it? First Saturday in November, is
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday in November. I was getting mixed up with the grand final. So I don't know, work that out. That's 4 or 5 weeks away. And I'll tell you who this man is. This man is called Bill Mitchell. And this is a bit of his bio before we get into. He was born in the UK in 1957. How old does that make him, Don? See if you can work that out. And he immigrated
65.
He immigrated to Scone in New South Wales in 1968. Now, he had a fair leg up because his parents, his dear old dad and mum, bought a stud called Yarraman Park from, I think, Scobie Breesley.
No, George Moore.
George Moore, right. He's got a thumbs up there for George Moore or Scobie Breesley?
Yeah, George Moore.
Right, well done. This is a whole bio. He attended Scone Primary School. He worked in stock and station agency, went to the UK, returned to Australia, then went over to America to further his education on being a trainer. Then he retired from being a trainer and he started the Mitchell Bloodstock agency, or Mitchell Bloodstock. I'll tell you what it's called. Mitchell Bloodstock. That's what it's called. And he is Mr. Bill Mitchell. Now, Bill, welcome to You Cannot Be Serious. Speak into the microphone, please. Pull it over. No, that's all right. That's all right. We want to hear what he says. And welcome to You Cannot Be Serious. The first question I would like to ask you is... Why have you come down here today? What are you down here in Melbourne for at the minute, seeing as you're domiciled, aren't you, in New South Wales?
Yes, I live in Paddington. Thank you for having me. Our mutual friend John McDonald arranged this meeting and this interview podcast. So here I am. I was coming down because we've got a dinner tomorrow night for some investors in horses.
In your bloodstock agency?
Yes. So we've got dinner tomorrow night, so I can have a game of golf tomorrow, and got here this morning to come and sit down with you.
So, Bill, you retired from being a trainer to take on being a bloodstock agent, which means, I presume, you'll probably be never ever asked questions like this from naive people like myself, but I presume a bloodstock agent sources the right prodigy or the right horses to sire and father potential race owners, and your expertise is in seeking out those ideal matches.
Yes.
Is that basically it?
It's one of the areas that I help people, and also I'm an investor for myself. So generally all things thoroughbreds I'm involved with now, except the training of them, which I haven't done for about 17 years.
Now, how did Don? How did your business, how have you survived over the pandemic? How did your business and racing in general survive over the pandemic? Did it put a spoke in the wheels of what you do, or did you just push on regardless?
Well, in Sydney, they missed about half a meeting at Warwick Farm one day. Every other meeting went ahead, which was quite extraordinary. So the gambling turnover, I think, was very good during the pandemic because people sat at home. There was no other sport on the television or any sport anywhere for quite some time. So I'm sure a lot of people got an insight into racing because they had nothing else to watch, no sport to watch. So it survived it pretty well. The prize money is fantastic in Victoria and New South Wales and other states as well, but that keeps everything ticking over and people investing, and generally the market for racehorses is very buoyant.
So you've moved, I presume, Bill, from being a trainer, you've moved to the upper echelon now, a bloodstock agent, an owner and a person who the purveyor of horseflesh is right up on a different level, I presume now, Bill. You are the elite.
Well, I'm certainly not working the hours I worked when I was a horse trainer. So I have more time, lots more time to enjoy myself and do things I like. And fortunately, I have enough expertise, experience in the racing world to be of some help to other people who perhaps are interested in getting involved
and want to give you a lot of money for you to for your expertise to show through, Bill.
I don't know if it's a lot of money, but a lot of money goes through our hands because horses, as you know, have got very expensive, especially at the top end. But I have clients that have been around me for 35, 40 years, and we still do business together. And
so your reputation precedes you. Where do you source most of your livestock? Or where do you source it from? Locally, or do you go internationally?
Occasionally internationally. I go to America and England, Europe a little bit, and do a bit of business over there. But most of the horses, most of my dealings are purchasing horses at the Magic Millions and the English sales, and really probably our business buys probably 10 to 20 yearlings a year, depending.
And what would the gross financial outcome generally be of buying 20 horses that you would think would take you to the next level?
Well,
what are you spending a year on buying horses?
Well, this year they ranged this is yearlings only, they ranged in price from probably $40,000 to $2 million.
I know this is a ridiculous question, Bill, but how do you tell the difference between a colt, as they call it? How would you tell the difference between a horse that you think's worth 40 grand and one that's worth 2 million? Is it purely who its its mother and father were?
Not purely, but that's very important. You look at that first, and then
But that's not a guarantee, is it?
If it's not a guarantee, no. But you take a look at that, and then you look at the page, the horse's pedigree, before you see the horse. And as you go through a catalogue, there'd be 40-50% of it you might not even want to look at the horse.
And who draws up the catalogue? Is it just someone else's opinion? Or is it just done on results?
It's done purely on results. It's pedigree, just like it's a family tree. It's got all the information you need to know about all the horses in the particular yearling's pedigree that you're looking at. All the information's right there on the page.
You said, Don, at any stage, seeing as you're a horse... seeing as you're... I have no idea what I'm asking Bill. I'm only asking Bill as a layman on what I find interesting, but people listening to this might think, shit, will someone ask him a sensible question that might actually amuse them?
Will you shut up?
Yes, Don.
Bill, it intrigues me. I don't know whether it's been said, certainly not in the mainstream media down here, but why did you retire from racehorse training when you had quite considerable success?
Hours.
No, I'm asking Bill.
Yeah, hours. You didn't like the hours.
that's one part of it. I just think I'd had enough. I never really wanted to train past 50 years of age, and I think I got to 48. It's a very you're virtually chronic fatigued half your life when you're a horse trainer.
Stressful?
You work six days a week, 6.5 days a week, early mornings, long days. You don't have to do it forever.
But Bill, can I ask you a couple of things which always intrigue me about trainers? Why have you got to get up so early to train a horse? Why can't you do it through the day, like you have late time through the afternoon, late morning and whatever else? Are you just following protocol, or this is the way they did it 56 years ago, so we continue doing it the same way?
Or do the horses require that?
No. I think in the middle of summer they probably require to get out before the heat of the
Yeah, I
day.
agree with that one.
But if you think about the middle of winter, when staff in some racing stables are turning up for work at 3 o'clock in the morning, I mean, it's just lunacy, really. And it evolved through prior to lighting being installed on training tracks. You couldn't go on the track until
Light.
daylight.
Exactly, 7 o'clock, 7:15.
Yeah, and until it was light, they wouldn't let you on the track. And of course, when they put the lights in the old days when all the fast work would have been done on grass gallops, of course, if you were the last man out there, you were galloping your horses down a ploughed paddock. So there was a rush to get there early. And then when lights were installed and they turned them on at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, everyone wanted to be on the track early. And if you speak to the young trainers, they don't want any part of these early mornings. But if you go and speak to the older ones, it sort of gets ingrained. But I think common sense will eventually stop it or push it back, because you can't get young people to, they don't want to work at 3 in the morning. I mean, there's really no need for it. So race clubs liked it because it meant that they could get the horses off the training tracks and get their staff in for maintenance earlier. But I think the pros and cons, it's slowly changing. It's changing in Sydney now, and I know there's a big push from most trainers that want to change it.
The other thing that intrigues me about you too is that
You've been intrigued a lot by Bill. That's the third time you've been intrigued.
Okay, shut up, will you? You did your apprenticeship in England. You went to America, and you also did it in Australia. What can you give me the benefits of, or what did you get from England that you used, what you got from America, and what was here in Australia?
Well
and
done.
You put together...
Neil Drysdale.
You put together Bill Mitchell.
Correct. I literally had no job when I went to England and found a job in a racing stable.
Whereabouts?
Out of necessity, in a town called Blueberry on the Berkshire Downs, near Lambourne. And I quite enjoyed working there, although I was literally starting from the bottom up. I did enjoy it and working with the racehorses, so I spent 18 months there. Essentially, I was 21 years old, so I wanted to travel anyway. I wanted to go to other parts of the world. But
so what did you pick up in England that we don't do here in Australia?
They're great conditioners. They get their horses. It's a different type of fitness. I find it, and I still go back and stay with the people that I used to work for. Eve Johnson Horton is now the trainer, Fulk's daughter. But they work their horses hard, and they've got hills. Not necessarily fast hard, but
well, the classic is Newmarket, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you've got so many, you can go fast work, you can do hill work, you can do sand work, and you ride them through the forest.
Yeah.
So the horse is mentally much fresher.
Yes, I think although they only come out of their box for about an hour a day over there, and then they're put back in and left for the other 23 hours. But the hour out is much nicer than an hour out going round and round in circles around Flemington or Randwick.
Don's a horseman, did you know that?
Googled
Yes,
Don
he's
and
a
I've
very,
seen that.
very elite horseman.
Will you shut up?
No,
please?
I won't
Will you
ask him. But just
Bill, the other thing that fascinates me about the English horses is their manners. Their manners prior. I don't know whether I'm a little but their manners before the barrier. I watch the jumps races. They line up with a bloody bit of strength, but they stand. One or two of them are a little bit fractious. Even their barrier manners before going into the barriers on a flat race. Do the English do it a little bit differently, or are the horses not as inbred or whatever, highly strung as what they are in Australia?
have you ever been asked that question before, Bill?
Similar question.
Have you? I would have thought no one's ever asked you that
Similar
question
questions.
ever.
Yeah, I think what you see in England is the top end of the tree. I mean, when essentially most of the races we watch are all the good horses, and if you watch the good horses in Australia, most of them behave pretty well. You get the odd horse that's less likely to be a good horse that's misbehaving because mentally it isn't equipped to be a good racehorse. Like some people are not equipped to be good at sport because they might have all the ability, they haven't got the mental aspect for it. I think we have a lot of their breeds here now. I mean, shuttle stallions, there's so many European and American stallions down here. We see all the different pedigrees, and everybody gets to know certain bloodlines that have temperament issues, and you might approach the training and education of that horse slightly differently. You might have to be just a bit more patient.
May I, Don? May I now? Following on from what Don said about what did you learn in England or the UK, you went over and it says you wanted to further educate yourself by joining Neil Drysdale's, is that right?
Yes.
Neil Drysdale's caravan or campaign or business. So if you learnt different things in UK, as Don asked you, what did Neil Drysdale round you off at?
Well,
if anything,
I went to California and I had a job with Neil Drysdale. So
he's a famous
he was
American trainer.
He was quite a young trainer then. He's probably 10 years older than me. But so if I was 23, he was quite young, and he was a private trainer for a Texas oil billionaire. But it was a relatively small private stable, so but it was run as any other racing stable would be in America, and it's much more scientific in America than England. And again, this is 40 years ago, so they were much more on top of the veterinary side of things. You didn't see a vet in an English racing stable. Once a week they might come in and worm a couple. But in America, the vet was there once or twice a day, and they were injecting joints and vitamin injections. Everything was much more when I say scientific, much more
edgy.
Edgy, manufactured.
Yep, that was just what I was going to ask you. I said the Americans would probably no such thing as a loser. They would turn every stone in order to be successful, so much so that they probably maybe did it outside the guidelines of what would be accepted. Would you say more than the American than the English?
Well, I mean, to this day they race on Butte and Lasix in America. So I mean,
they on what?
They race legally on Butte, which is
an anti-inflammatory, which is banned,
which is similar to Nurofen, and they race on Lasix, which is a diuretic, which doesn't stop them bleeding, but it helps to reduce the bleeding in their lungs.
Another naive question, this Bill. So that if the Melbourne Cup, for example, has it ever attracted any American horses who probably couldn't adapt to what is legal and what's not to run out here? Has there you'll love this question, has there ever been an American horse run in the Melbourne Cup? Yes,
there have. Certainly American bred horses, and I think there's been an American trained horse over here. They
chances
would run drug free here because
they'd have
the
to.
testing is is state of the art, so they wouldn't be running on their drugs here. But I mean, horses, if a horse has a tendency to bleed, which is hemorrhaging in its lungs, if you gallop it twice a week and you can reduce that, then it reduces it on race day. So it can be used therapeutically, and it's very necessary to use therapeutic drugs in the training of racehorses, like as it is in the training of athletes, really.
So, if I could be the devil's advocate, horses are being exploited for profit and gain, as opposed to the animal activists who say, well, if you've got to gallop a horse twice a way to stop it bleeding in its lungs, is this pretty ethical or moral?
Well, it's a finely tuned athlete,
yes.
And it's as you say, they're on the edge. I mean, they're very, very fit, and they're big, powerful animals. They've got to be treated, but they need some therapeutic help along the way.
Do you think that, and this is another thing that I was amazed at, coming out of a sport where you could actually do measurements on fitness, strength, whatever else. To me, it's still left to the eye of the trainer as to whether that horse is fit, whether it's overweight, whatever. Do you think they could make more advances in veterinary science and research to actually give people, trainers, a real feedback on how the horse is? As far as, as an athlete, you take into account a fat percentage, you take bone mass, you take girth, and there's a formula. And, as an athlete, as an AFL footballer, you're 12% body fat. If you're 14, you're obese. If you're 10%, you're a little bit underdone. But with horses, as I go back to, it's just the eye of the trainer.
Yeah, and there's a lot of more advancements now. I mean, there's a lot of blood tests, for example,
bloods or whatever.
Things. But also now the trainers have got these e-trackers on their horses when they work.
And what is an e-tracker?
That tells you, I mean, they don't need to carry a stopwatch anymore. The e-tracker downloads to their iPad and tells them exactly how fast they're going every furlong, what their heart rate is. You get optimum fitness levels, and you can chart from that when a horse is ready to perform at its best. I mean, a horse can't perform at its best necessarily every time it races. Some horses need 2 or 3 runs to get fit. Some horses are good fresh and taper off. It's getting very scientific now, and nearly all the trainers now, I mean, are using that sort of equipment. I mean, I get it. When I started training in the early 80s, I guess, there was none of that stuff, and you knew if you ran your horse, and you weren't. Sometimes you just were. It was just race by race, trying to work out. Some horses looked a bit big, some horses looked a bit light. Maybe they raced like that. You had to work it all out. Now it's probably a lot more scientific now than it was.
So Bill Mitchell, we're speaking to, Don. People say, could we mention every now and again who we're speaking to, because no one knows after a while. So this is Bill Mitchell, a ex-trainer and now bloodstock agent of Mitchell Bloodstock Agency. Now, Don, I wanted just to ask a question, but following up from what you said, our mutual friend, John McDonald, I'm sure he's spoken to you about this. This is said to be the greatest advance in horse feed for the last 100 years, a thing called, have you heard of a thing called Equifresh, which is apparently turf or horse feed grown specifically with minerals and vitamins in it that have taken horse feed to another level, or is that just hyperbole from the people who grow it?
It's not brand new. It's
not
hydroponically grown.
I see.
Whichever seed you want to grow, and I mean that I first saw that where you actually grow a small area or a patch. And if it's grown hydroponically, you can sort of you put what you want in the water and it goes into the plant, and then the seeds germinate, and there's quite a thick. Just looking at their website, there's quite a thick root system, and the green sprouts. Well, they chop that up into little squares and give a square to each horse in training, and it's, yes, whatever you put in the water is going to be going into the horse's system essentially, and the horse clearly likes it because it doesn't get a lot of fresh green feed. And
if you looked after your if horses were put out the pasture, you did soil tests and whatever else, the greatest antioxidant, whatever else, is grass, isn't it?
Absolutely, and they love it, and it's natural for them. And horses in training, most horses in training eat out of a feed tin that's a metre off the ground.
That's right. Yeah. Well done.
So a horse in nature puts its head on the ground to eat. To feed, and obviously by putting its head down, a lot of the acids and refluxes and things can drain back out of its mouth or its nostril, and that's how nature does it for horses. Whereas if you feed them with their head up all the time, they get the ulcers, which is what this feed is supposed to be good for. Clearly, there's a lot of acid goes down into their stomach that perhaps shouldn't. So they're constantly treating horses for that.
So the only reason I mentioned the Equifresh, because I know nothing, Bill, as you've very quickly worked out, is that I was up in Queensland with my son, and he was with a trainer or someone who was right into horses, and we were captive audience at a hotel with a TAB, and they were betting, and this bloke bet. The only bets he put on were on the horses he knew had eaten or were eating Equifresh. And I know you think I'm making this up, every one of those horses that he backed won. And I said, is that a coincidence, or is that... He said, no, that's because they're eating this new produced grain, or the new produced grass. Is that just a fraction overstating? But he said he nominated them. He nominated them before, not every race. He said, "Here's the card up. This horse and this horse and this horse. This horse will win." And every one of them won. That it was on Equifresh. And this is not a plug for Equifresh because I have no idea what it is. Do you think that's a bit far fetched, Bill?
No, I'm sure it helps them, and if they're physically slightly better than they were 2 weeks ago because you put them on Equifresh, and if they're mentally a bit happier, then perhaps they'll run half a length better. But you're dealing in very small margins to make huge amounts of difference in a horse race. And it doesn't matter what you give a slow horse, you're not going to make it run any faster.
So obviously in your business, reputation is everything, and reputation, if you've got the reputation of delivering the goods, and I think you credit your start of your success to what put you on the map was winning. It was training from the planets, a horse that gave you some credibility, or is that I'm asking a ridiculous question?
That was my first Group 1 winner.
Oh, Group 1, yep.
It was my first Group 1 winner in
that's important.
1989, very important, yeah.
How long have you been training, Bill, before you got your first Group 1?
I'd been training on my own for probably 5 years.
So it's a huge milestone, like winning a premiership too. That puts you on the map if you win train a Group 1 winner.
Look, there's some trainers that have trained all their lives and never trained one, but they're not easy to get. But yes, you need a very good horse, and if you're lucky enough to win.
Where did that come from? From the planets?
I bought From the Planet at the Sydney, what used to be called the January sale. So I think he cost $19,000, which was probably about average then.
And that was your talent, your perception of just picking that horse out for whatever reason?
Look, I've picked out a lot of horses over the years, and it doesn't matter. You can buy all the most expensive, most beautiful, best bred horses. They're not all going to be able to run fast, but I think some people have a intuition, a knack, and I feel you have to mix up the science and the artistry side of it, the side of it that some people have, that they can look at an animal and say, well, you know, I can see what that's going to look like in 2 years' time when it's going to hit its peak as a racehorse, and if you can get it right a reasonable amount of the time, you're going to have much more success.
So you go for a combination of it's very hard confirmation when you're buying a young horse, because you just mentioned how is it going to grow out. You go from breeding, but the thing that frustrates me with the thoroughbred is that it's become a very fine animal that's lacking a lot of bone in comparison to years gone by. Is this because we're breeding more middle distance horses here now, or is it a fact of inbreeding?
I think it's a lot to do with a lot of European blood coming out here, and they're a much finer thoroughbred there than we were breeding going back in the last 100 years. More recently, we're getting much more American and European blood into our stock, so they are finer. But again, you can get too plumpy, too heavy, too bulky. So it's just a matter of fine-tuning it to get the best athlete you can.
Do you ever see staying races coming to the fore again? I see a few in the country now, country meetings now. Do you think racing's trying to encourage trainers to go back into stayers, or do you think it's a worthless thing because there's not the money involved in? And you mentioned a lot of hard work goes into stayers in comparison to sprinters and middle distance horses.
Whenever most people that go to the horse sales and are looking to buy a colt breeding stock, essentially, if you're going to get a colt that's going to go to stud, he needs to be fast nowadays. They don't want to breed to Derby winners. I'm not saying they don't full stop. They stand them in New Zealand very successfully. There's been a few Melbourne Cup winners go to stud successfully. But most the top quality stallions had a lot of speed. And even if they produce horses that run over longer distances, possibly through the mares they're being bred to, then most of the breeders want to breed to speed in this country. And even in Europe now, Derby winners and 2,000 plus metre horses, a lot of them end up siring jumpers.
This is Bill Mitchell from Mitchell Bloodstock, ex-trainer, ex-starred on, world-renowned figure in the racing industry. So you tell me. So Bill, is it important, you love this, is it important to have a relationship with a horse, be a horse whisperer? Or I used to watch, you'll love this, I used to watch a show called Heartland, which was a Canadian production which went for 8,000 episodes. And it was the most passive, no sex, no violence, no swearing, no nothing, but it was about this young girl who, and I'm sure it was made for television, but had an affinity with any horse, and she just got inside its brain and became its real friend, and vice versa. Is there such a thing in your industry as that you get a horse to run for you, not in spite of you, or is that all bullshit?
No, there's people like that. And
are you a horse whisperer?
I don't think I'm a horse whisperer. I think there's a difference between that and the understanding. Those horse whisperer people are more inclined to be horse breakers or educators, the people that take the horse from the beginning of its journey.
Yeah. So when it gets to you, that's already done.
When it gets to me as a trainer, I don't want really to be having to re-educate it. I want the horse that can walk into the stables and walk out with a rider on it, and nobody's going to get injured, horse or rider. The horse whisperers have pretty much done their job by then, but there's a lot of people who have a great understanding of horses. But I have seen that, we've all seen the stuff where the horses walk around behind you and follow you around.
Yeah.
And
I do that with Don. I've been down watching Don do equestrian, and Don has a tremendous relationship with his horses. I went down there one day to the Werribee jumping area down there, the Estetford down there, and when I drove up in my car, the horse made a beeline for me. He thought, wow, I've got someone who might have an empathy with and might actually treat me nicely, and that was me. And the horse, he couldn't get the horse away from my car. I said, I'm going to leave now, and the horse followed me down the drive, just wishing it would be with someone who he had a relationship with as opposed to Don.
Just getting off the bullshit, Bill, you idiot. Listen, you live in Sydney. Last couple of weeks here in Melbourne, we've been subjected to PR by the racing industry. One is there was an article appeared of Jamie Carr in the Stella magazine. You know, it was stylist, it was photographed, it was and a journalist. So 3 people got involved in the story. There's also a thing on 7+ at the moment about the racing industry. Do you think they're a little bit too concerned that this is the authorities in Victoria with regard to their image in racing? Or do you think the image is up there, or do you think it should be improved? Or do you think they're just going a little bit overboard?
I think that it's something that the industry has to be very aware of. Horse welfare is so important now, post-racing and all through their life. So they're onto it. And
who's onto it?
I think Racing Victoria are onto it, Racing New South Wales are onto it. It's like sadly you get the lowest common denominator, and that drags everyone in the industry down to that lowest common denominator. But as we know, 99% of horses are maintained beautifully in any part of their life as a racehorse or post-racing. But I think racing is a sport that has to somehow stay relevant, because you can bet on everything else now. You can bet on all the sports. It's much easier to back Penrith to playing Souths than it is to pick the winner of a 12-horse race. And sports betting's putting pressure on racing. Luckily, we had a great result with the bookmakers, where they now have to put back into racing. If they bet on it, they have to pay a percentage of turnover, and that's been a big help for racing, for prize money, for money to spend on infrastructure, training facilities, horses post-racing. They're buying farms, they're looking, you can, if you haven't got anywhere to put your horse when it's finished racing, Racing New South Wales will take it in most cases and look after it on a farm.
Now Bill,
could I just go on?
Please, Don, I wish you would.
Because there's another racing in Australia. Do you think it is the best in the world, in as much as the number of meetings? There are 2 meetings on Sunday, like Friday they'll race in Victoria down at Sale, and then there's Moonee Valley at night. I see a lot of employees within the racing industry coming from England and Ireland.
Hong Kong?
No. There are a few in South Australia, jockeys in South Australia, yes, that's very true.
Pretty busy meetings in Hong Kong.
Am I right in saying that, it's a very healthy industry especially in Victoria?
Oh, it's racing in Victoria is world class, but
is there anywhere else in the world where they race like they do in Victoria?
Well, they race, most states in Australia race, every day of the week now. They race on Good Friday now. They never used to. I mean, they'll be racing on Christmas Day soon. When I started training, there was no Sunday racing. I think you need the people that have to work in the day-to-day looking after the horses. It makes it very difficult to try to get any time off or family time. So, but that doesn't worry the authorities much. They're not interested in that. They just say, well, you take the day off, and there's always someone on and someone off. You've got to have shift workers. So that's the way it is. They want to race on Sundays because there's betting turnover.
And it's very important for the government because it's the only industry that really didn't turn down or turn off through COVID.
Absolutely, and they make a fortune out of it.
So is it generally that is it generally the fact that the horses are successful, or the jockeys who ride them? Someone said if you ever go to the races and you don't know a lot about it, just back the jockeys because they'll end up riding they'll either ride the good horses or they'll be able to get the reasonable horses to the line. Or is that another myth, Bill?
No, the good jockeys end up on the better horses in each race because if you if you have the best jockey on, he might give you a slight edge over a lesser jockey. But
he also does his research, doesn't he? And he'll ring you up as the trainer and say, "Can I sit on that horse?"
Yeah, that's right. And I remember Shane Dye. You never had to ring him for a ride. He was always ringing you first as soon as he saw. He knew before you were putting the nomination in that where you were going to be running a horse. And he didn't have a racing manager. He just did it himself.
And he went to Hong Kong, didn't he?
Yeah, he went to Hong Kong.
And we went to Hong Kong and got involved in some controversy over there, I believe.
I can't remember.
Conveniently.
There was sometimes controversy around Shane, but and he still lives up there. I think.
No, he's a good man. I used to play golf with him. Did you?
I've played golf with him. Yeah, I don't like to bet with him on the golf course.
Not at all. The smaller the man that you play golf with, the jockeys. I played with a lot of them. Their clubs were usually bigger than they were, and they could beat the living suitcase out of you. It wouldn't matter what your handicap was; they'd rip money out of your wallet.
Why? They're cheat.
They're good with the rules, but they're not bad golfers.
While you're floundering, Bill, why is there partnerships in racing now? It wasn't a thing. It's come in the last maybe 5 years.
It started in New Zealand. I think it's been going longer than that here. I mean, it's a very demanding profession. If you can break it down a bit so that you can share the load a bit, I think it makes sense. I mean,
would you go into partnership if you went into it again?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, but I've got no interest in going into it again. But it's the sensible way to go. I mean, the trainers now. There's a few trainers in Victoria that have got much younger guys that have come in partnership, and I'm thinking of Anthony and Sam Freedman and Mick Price with Michael Kent Jr. Those stables are firing with these young guys coming in who have travelled around the world and spotted new ideas and bring a whole younger attitude to it. Horse trainers inclined to get a bit old and cranky. You've lived your life working, sleep deprived, and essentially bring some young blood in it. It's really working for them.
Now, Bill,
Sam.
Corruption is the hallmark of any industry in any part of the world, and horse racing is no different. Have you ever been part of any scams or people set you up to take you down? What is the biggest scam that you've not been involved in, but bore witness to, or have you been on the end of a scam where people have tried to set you up?
I don't think I've been on the end of any scams. I suppose, excuse me, the biggest scam we ever saw in my lifetime was the fine cotton.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, the fine cotton where they substituted another horse for that.
And there was a bit of that going on at the time, I'm sure.
But you would prepare a horse, and then you'd have some information would be leaked out if your employees are not that loyal, and there would be a big plunge on it. And when you thought you might just have it to yourself, you've been bought undone.
You can come undone with all sorts of plunges and betting on horses for sure.
I've just read those two books that Alan Tripp wrote.
Yeah, I've read 2 books.
And the other one was, who do we have in here, Don, that wrote a very good book on the same subject? I can't remember. Alan Tripp, and anyhow, I've never read a book in my life, let alone 2 racing books, and I found them fascinating, just with all the colourful identities in the business.
Yes, well, they call them racing identities. I mean,
They're crooks.
They're in a lot of other industries and businesses as well. They just somehow seem to get a foot in the door in racing
Now,
occasionally.
Do you think it's a little bit funny that trainers are able to bet on a horse yet jockeys aren't?
The stewards will ask you, have you bet on the horse? If
As a trainer?
as a form of proof that the horse was trying. I mean, certainly they used to. I don't know. I assume they probably still do. Have you supported the horse? I mean, jockeys, I think they're actually doing the steering. I don't know. I don't make the rules, but
Do you blame jockeys when you were training? Did you blame jockeys for their race ride?
I wasn't much of a jockey blamer. No, I think sometimes a lot of stuff happens, and a lot of people talk through their kick, and and it's look for something to blame. Something goes wrong, and jockeys make errors in racing. But I think you have to understand, what's going on out there.
Gee, to get a position for a jockey when the horse jumps, you don't know how the thing's going to jump. Where you going to finish up in that particular race? It's a real gamble. To blame a jockey for a horse's performance has got to be a very, very bad mistake.
And there's split-second things
Decisions.
happen, and they can't change it. They can be in the right spot 1 minute, and a horse runs across them, they're in totally the wrong spot. And I think a lot of people blame jockeys for a lot of stuff that they just create in.
Would you say that jockeys are the hardest working employees? Is there any other job where you've got to get up in the hours that they do, put up with the conditions, riding, rain? Caulfield the other week, it was freezing and it was raining, and they had to perform. They were right in the heat, and also it's a dangerous job, riding a horse at speed. It's a very
dangerous job. Yeah, it certainly is. But they work hard, and most of them are very well paid, and they're the pin-up boys and girls in the industry, as we spoke about before with Jamie Carr. She's a pin-up girl in the industry now. It's the jockeys are they're the athletes. They're young, they're fit, they look good. The industry sort of needs to use them as part of their PR machine.
Bit like the people who ride MotoGP, Don. You'd almost put them in the same category. Dangerous, young, bon vivants, film stars, gonads as big as your head. Bill, this is it for me. I'm not sure I can think of any more ridiculous questions to ask you. Your peers in the training industry and the owners, do you get on with them? Do you chat to them, or are you a pretty reclusive bunch and don't give any secrets away by chatting idly to people over a beer? And who are the people that you have befriended or have a good relationship with?
I've got a lot of horse trainers, horse owners, jockeys, blacksmiths, veterinarians. We all spend a lot of, not so much me anymore, but when I was a trainer, you spend a lot of time with those people, and of course you have a relationship, and your clients, your owners become your friends, and your friends become your clients, and sometimes it doesn't always end as well, because of course not every horse.
When there's money involved, the tensions can rise, Bill.
Without a doubt.
Speaking of money, Bill, you're a golfer, are you? Of sorts. What do you play off?
17, 18.
Wow. Because Don, we play golf. Not Bill and I, but a group of us play golf. Ex-coach of St Kilda, Grant Thomas, and a few others play golf down at the National every Thursday, and Bill's coming down tomorrow, and I got a feeling off 17, Bill's about to tear us a new one. I've got a feeling he's a very sneaky man. I should do some research on where he's a member of what golf club and what his official handicap is on the board, because I've got a feeling he's about to just get a small Christmas hamper back in his back pocket to take back to New South Wales with him. Won't worry me, Bill, Don, because I'll give it my best shot, but I'm not sure if I'm playing with you. The draw has come out, Bill. Am I playing with you tomorrow? No. Am I?
Macca says you are.
Am I? I've got to check now, Bill.
The sledging usually starts on the first tee,
No,
not
no.
24 hours in advance.
I'm just going
Now,
to...
while he's looking that up, give me trainers that you hold in high esteem that are currently in the business, or maybe gone in years gone by.
Bill, I am too. Sorry.
Here we,
Give us present day.
present day.
Yep.
Waller's extraordinary, and Kieran Mars coming through the ranks again. I think he's an extraordinary young horse trainer. Then we go.
Are they still training at a percentage? Like I think you trained at. Geez, you had a high percentage actually for place getters. Is it the number of horses they've got in work? They still get a 20% return. You know.
Trainers now are all terrified of strike rate. Most trainers are terrified of strike rate. Because it's all so easily documented now. I mean, if you go into the New South Wales racing site and look up the trainers, it's got how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the percentage of winners, percentage of place. It's all on the internet for you to look at. So strike rate, I guess longer. Now they don't, everything trials 2 or 3 times before it runs. We often wouldn't trial them, we might trial them once. But you just burn it round in a unsuitable race first up, get it work its way into fitness. But we weren't really concerned about our strike rate. Now I think they're all
Worried about it.
Well, it's in the back of their minds, certainly.
So of the present day, you admire Waller.
Oh, let's think about.
What about
Melbourne,
gone? They don't
Anthony
come.
Friedman. There's a lot of good trainers.
What about in the past
In the past,
that influenced you?
Tommy Woodcock.
Tommy, I do go back that far. He was still training when I was a young trainer. But, Neville Begg I worked for a year, and he was a wonderful gentleman and a great horse trainer. So, and I worked out of Randwick with Tommy Smith and Bart Cummings and Brian Mayfield Smith, all champion trainers, all overlapping each other. But
Righto, Don. That's it. We can't ask you any other questions. This is the final group at the golf tomorrow, Don. This is me, John McDonald, Mr. Mitchell here, and Adam Truskothic. So that's the final group down there. And I just now, for some research purposes, where are you a member at what club?
Royal Sydney.
Royal Sydney, and you'd be a Royal, not under a nom de plume there. You're under Bill Mitchell.
Yes.
Well, I'll be making a call to Royal Sydney and asking
I can
what
show you my golf link number.
you golf with your handicap on it.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Well,
It's
that's
15.7.
15.7. Well, that's all right.
Means nothing to me. You two could.
No,
talk.
that's right, Don. Well, Bill Mitchell. Tell people who Bill Mitchell is. He's Mitchell Bloodstock.
Mitchell Bloodstock.
He's a star.
Yes, a very good trainer, and I really don't know why he ever gave up training.
He
But
sat
they're
there-
personal reasons, and he was a very good trainer.
He sat there
from
with that.
Sydney and came down to Melbourne.
Bill
for a
has
while.
sat there with that passive look on his face, looking at me as though I'm an absolute dullard, and but just humouring us and answering the questions. And Don, he's been intrigued by you, who are almost speaking to him in the prone position there. You're almost lying in those chairs, and you thought of nothing. You did no research on Bill at all. You just followed up on some questions I asked, and then asked the generic questions you ask about anyone who's to do with horses or anyone who's to do with the
Press the
Hawthorn
button.
Football
Press
Club.
the button.
Bill Mitchell, thank you very much for joining us on You Cannot Be Serious.